is James Walkinshaw, first-term Democrat, Northern Virginia. I want to bring a little breaking news here. 535 is just going to post this story in a moment. The top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, that's Jamie Raskin of Montgomery County, Maryland, is about to introduce legislation that would call for a special master and a special compensation fund to be stood up to provide money to injured January 6 police officers. There were 140 plus injured officers from that day, not counting those who suffered trauma, not counting the families impacted by deaths by suicide of officers in the days after. The compensation fund would be set up for the families and for the injured officers. It's a component of the argument of National Police Week, which is underway here at the Capitol and in communities nationwide, where they're paying tribute to fallen and injured police officers. This will be a piece of legislation from the Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee in line with National Police Week. So again, a special master and a special compensation fund that would earmark money directly to injured police officers. You'll note in recent months there have been some taxpayer-funded settlements with the estate of Ashley Babbitt, the member of the mob who was shot and killed by an officer as the mob breached the House Speaker's lobby. There are other litigation tools being employed by January 6 defendants to seek taxpayer money through settlements. Those haven't closed yet. In this case, this would be a taxpayer-funded compensation fund for the injured police officers, some of whom are still facing bills, none of whom has received a taxpayer-funded payout so far. So that story will post in a moment at the 5:35, and it is exclusive to us as we begin the afternoon here at the Capitol. Marianna Sotomayor is joining us now. The Democrats on the Judiciary Committee have been fighting a messaging battle through this Congress. They have no subpoena power. They have no ability to leverage their committee seats to command witnesses to come forward. How do you view what that panel does if the coin flips and they have control?
You know, we are in that season where we're seeing bills introduced that may not, I don't want to say it's never say never, but it's very likely, given what we see up here on Capitol Hill, that this is not something that Republicans are suddenly going to consider, put on the floor, and it becomes law. Like, that's just not the path. So what you're seeing now is Democrats intentionally proposing legislation that they hope will be part of the conversation, or maybe one of those first couple of bills that a Democratic House majority ends up taking up. And this is a conversation that, had you talked to Democrats in their last majority, they thought, okay, January 6th is settled. Like, we had a whole committee to talk about this, investigate this, and yet here we are. And there's obviously so many ramifications to what happened that day that still affects so many people, and that's what you're seeing. And I'm sure a reason why Raskin, who is the ranking member of Judiciary, would be the chairman of Judiciary if the gavels are given to the Democrats next year. This is going to be a major priority and something that is not going to go away.
Unequivocally, it's a messaging bill. I think they would tell you that point blank. But one of the things they like to test drive when they do messaging bills is how fast can they amass co-sponsors? What is the path to building a coalition, at least inside your own party, if you were to take the majority? And the early run, as of the 12 p.m. hour here on the East Coast, is that they've got 47 co-sponsors like this on the bill. Perhaps a decent start, perhaps an indication of what kind of future and trajectory it would have if you tried it, for real, with a Democratic majority. I want to pivot to what else the House Democratic Caucus is talking about today. You were reporting on their caucus meeting in the Capitol Visitor Center this morning. Sounds like the focus is on the Voting Rights Act and whatever damage has been done.
Correct. Listen, this is the first time that Democrats were able to all come together. This is them meeting weekly when they're in session is not new, always happens. But then you have some very interesting gatherings, and I would put this one this morning into that category. Fireworks is what was explained to me by multiple people in the room. The reason why is because Democrats are so upset by these rulings, both by the Virginia Supreme Court and, of course, the Supreme Court of the United States, and they do not want to see their chance at the majority just be slipping away from them. We're seeing that happening as Republican states across the South are redistricting.
Well, what do they want their caucus leaders to do about it? I mean, short of, bang the drum and try to mobilize voters, do they feel like they're empowered to try something?
So that's what the conversation was about today. Part of it, Jeffries has, I will give him credit a little bit here, is that they had a feeling that the Supreme Court could strike the Voting Rights Act. he started looking at how can we continue to redistrict past 2026. There's a number of states that they will do that in 28. Now that map is expanding a little bit larger for them. But what can be done now is the question ahead of 26. Essentially, what leaders and also the feedback from members to the leadership was everybody has to be involved. There are a number of Democratic members who, for example, have not paid their dues to the DCCC. Yep. That happens at every cycle. But there is much more. There's more alarms just going off.
You start with the money call where you're like, everybody who hasn't donated or given your contributions, you got to give your contributions. Look what's happening. We need that money for Pennsylvania, Iowa, Ohio.
Yes, and for members who may campaign in districts nearby, go to frontline districts, go to those red to blue districts. You actually all have to be participating in this. There's also some conversations of potential punishment. If members just sit back, relax, say, I'm not going to donate, or I'm campaigning just in my backyard, you might not get that committee spot.
Let me unpack that for a minute. I think it's worth pulling the curtain back for a second here. If you're a frontline Democrat, somebody who's in a district that has got some level of competitiveness to it, maybe it's something that's got a 5-point margin here or there, it's not your responsibility to go canvassing the world and helping your colleagues and throwing lots of money to them.
Yeah.
It's for those who are, I suppose, at a certain threshold
right.
of safety or perceived safety, they're expected to get to work.
Yes, yeah, it is. And the thing is that a lot of members get comfortable. Listen, this is not just a unique thing to the Democratic Party. There's Republicans who also face the same kind of criticism, but what they really want is to see all Democrats out there. But also, there's conversations about the Congressional Black Caucus, because regardless, even if House Democrats do everything possible to win a number of districts, including ones that went super favorably to Trump for the last election, we're seeing so much headwinds against Republicans, that the Congressional Black Caucus is not going to look the same. It is going to dwindle in numbers, especially when these southern districts end up changing.
Or at least shift geographically, because you can see a scenario, we hear the conversations from our sources, Marianna, that states like New York and California and Illinois may be told to get back at it again and try new lines that perhaps can plus up the number of Black Caucus members.
Yeah.
But respectfully, the issue areas, the expertise, and the representation that the Black Caucus shifting north has an impact.
Yep.
Is there a sense from your sources in the Democratic caucus that they are too focused on 26 and that there's a push to get them more focused on 28? Or is there a sense we need to find something to do now, even though it looks like the cases are closed?
Yeah, there's much more of a sense of we have to do something now. I think because, honestly, if you were talking to Democrats when they were last here over a week ago, they were feeling so good. They got Virginia, right? Like, they were riding high on that. They were going to more or less equate the Republican redistricts across the country. Still going to be an even playing field. So what has changed is, what do we need to do now in 2026? And that's where, again, the Black Caucus comes in. I'm told that they are going to be mobilizing in Alabama this weekend. If there's one thing that the Black Caucus does well, it is protesting. Silent protests, active marches on the streets. So I've been told to expect that moving forward. How much does that end up moving people? We'll have to see, because, again, the tactics of the 1960s, should it be ignored? But everybody's online now, right? Like, it's not that so many people are saying, hey, let me go to the streets. We've seen a number of marches across the country. We got to mobilize people that are not already engaged within the base. That's what Democrats have to do to make sure that they can flip a number of districts, including there's Democrats and independents who live in very strong Trump districts. Those people turn out. That's what Democrats are really hoping for, so that they don't just win the majority, but can win in a very decisive way.
A few things from my notebook. Talked to Steve Cohen, the Memphis Democrat, who is being very much boxed out through the new maps in Tennessee, and asked him what his thoughts were on the federal legal challenges that have been mustered, including by the NAACP, to try to stop the redraws in Tennessee. Congressman Cohen says he is not going to make predictions about this. He has some hope in legal cases, but he says he's not putting all his hope in a legal case. It's a real unclear and cloudy future for Steve Cohen or Democratic representation in Memphis, and I think people are declaratively acknowledging that here. Court hearing on that matter is going to be May 21st. It is a local court case in Tennessee to challenge from the NAACP to that state. In Virginia, we have a whole bunch of candidates in districts that don't exist anymore or never existed in the first place. In the 7th district, the one that was going to be accused of being a lobster-shaped district that spans from the Northern Virginia suburbs down towards Harrisonburg and James Madison University and Interstate 81. There were a whole bunch of candidates lining up because it was a vacant, unoccupied seat that was going to be overwhelmingly Democratic. So you had this arms race of people who wanted in on the race and were raising boatloads of money, millions of dollars. They tell me they're not sure what they're going to do. They're waiting for appeals. The appeals will not work in Virginia, so they're going to have to bow out and, I suppose, disperse or hold for the future that campaign money. What's your conversations with Virginia Democrats like? Mine is a mixture of denial of what's just happened, and the reality is you have to sink in for some, to we need to take this energy, bottle it, and try to win maybe 2 or 3 of these 4 seats we were hoping to gain.
Yes, so our colleague on 535, Leanne Caldwell, just interviewed Don Beyer. I was able to grab him right after because I had these questions as I talked to some of these Virginia Democrats, like what does it look like? And realistically, everyone acknowledges they're not going to be able to go back to the maps that voters just voted for. There was a very contentious call over the weekend with Virginia lawmakers and also Jeffries, and I think something notable that came out of those conversations was this idea to put age limits on the state Supreme Court justices.
That feels like a third rail.
That was, people just angrily shouting suggestions because there is that fervor among Democrats to just do everything possible. Well, as some Democrats pointed out to me, if we were to do that, what makes us any different than, let's say, Trump saying, hey, I'm going to endorse other candidates to run against those Indiana senators who voted against redistricting to try and get my kind of people to do what I want.
So I want to press you more on that. The caucus members you talk to, when you do your reporting on this, do they want to fight Trump-like in some cases? Do they want to have a symmetrical warfare? Because I'm getting a sense that the caucus is somewhat divided as to whether they want to restore norms and not be like the other guy. And there's others who say we need to be like the other guy or we're going to lose here. I bet that fracture is something you're seeing.
Yes, I'm hearing the same thing too. You have some who are just kind of looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, we can't do what Republicans have been doing. We can't do what Trump is doing. And then you have a whole other set that says, well, if we don't, they're going to beat us out of power for a very long time. So we got to push back. And that is absolutely a division that I think is going to continue on, especially because, listen, if Democrats win the House and also potentially the Senate, you still have Trump in the White House. So the base is going to be calling for impeachments and investigations, which it's congressional oversight duty. They have that responsibility to investigate. They're going to have to tread that with the reality that so many Americans, regardless of party, are clearly showing in the polling. What's top of mind is economy, affordability, and not only just straddling that line, but proving to voters ahead of 2028, hey, you can trust the Democratic Party again. That is the biggest thing that Democrats are going to have to contend with because, of course, Trump is going to be a foil if, again, Democrats control Congress, but it is going to be so much harder to prove to voters who, again, voted for Democrats for a long time, said, the Democratic Party hasn't produced for me, I'm going to try out the Republican Party. Now those voters saying, oh my gosh, not what I was expecting. Let me vote for Democrats. But if Democrats, or frankly, if Congress, if government is not able to alleviate a lot of the feelings that people are experiencing on the economy, are voters just going to say, I give up, I'm going to sit down, I'm not going to vote? There's some people who are already there. That is the biggest, I think, more ideological, big picture struggle that I'm hearing from Democrats is how do we put proof to the pudding, especially after 2024? Voters saying, I don't trust the party. I might not like Trump, but I don't trust the Democratic Party on a number of issues.
I want to be transparent here. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina was going to join us and talk about his new legislation on cryptocurrency and his efforts in 2022 to pass that sweeping Gun Control Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and what he would recommend Congress do next year if they want to try something like that again. It's a busy vote day in the Senate. Votes are underway, so we're going to pause on that and return with Senator Tillis in the days to come. We're expecting Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida to join us. He's just down the hall at his office. So we'll see how fast he can walk down here to talk about new legislation he's proposing, which would overhaul the U.S. Secret Service. Amid the concerns about not one, not two, but 3 attempted assassinations against President Trump, there are concerns the Secret Service may need different resources, different oversight, or a different set of agencies to which it reports. We'll talk to Congressman Moskowitz in the minutes ahead. He's the chair of the Congressional Sneaker Caucus, so if he can run down here, he'll save time. While I have you, though, I want to ask about another element of the House Democratic Caucus that jumps out at me, and it relates to Florida.
Yeah.
They brought a field hearing on the road on Tuesday to Palm Beach to talk about the Epstein Files controversy, which continues to dog the administration, and they heard from survivors. The survivors have been trying to get an audience with Congress, and the First Lady has recommended that Congress give the survivors more of an audience, but they got one yesterday. And what occurred to me watching this is you have Democrats on the House Committee on Oversight who have found a voice, even though they're in the minority. They have staged high-profile things. They have moved things on the Epstein files. They seem to have drawn some bipartisan votes in the committee to free up more things involving Epstein. Things seem different in that committee this year. What's your reporting tell you?
Yeah, no, all of these investigative committees are now realizing, okay, we don't have the subpoena power, as you alluded to earlier. We don't have the gavels. There's only so much that we can do. Why not hold shadow hearings, as we call them up here? Why not try and continue to investigate despite we don't need the Republicans to agree to hold a hearing up here on Capitol Hill. Let's go and find the survivors. Let's go out into the public. And this is happening across a number of committees. And the reason why is because Democrats know that if they take back the gavels, again, Trump's going to be president, and they already have a list, I'm told, like literally lists writing down of all of the different things that the administration has done. They're starting to investigate it now so that they're not caught flat-footed on day one. They want to just hit the ground running, start these investigations, start subpoenaing people, and actually hold hearings on Capitol Hill. Again, draft those bills, potentially hold people in contempt of Congress. Who knows? They don't want to waste time, and that's a lesson learned from the last majority. They want to start working now.
Marianna, thanks for the extra time with us today.
Of course.
Learned a lot. I learned a lot. It's always a good sign. Back on 5:35 in just a moment. Please stay here. We've got a lot more to come in the minutes ahead.